What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Dogs and Hogs. We've got Russ Tanner as usual. I am Bobby Andrews. We're here to talk about some Bulldogs and barbecue as usual. Russ, off the top, we'll go over a few different things today. We've got Roddy Nabolsi joining us as well on the back end of things. But a couple things. UGA Pro Day today. We got some news on Pierce Spurlin. We'll hit right off the top here in a minute. Not much to talk about there, but it's noteworthy at the very least. And then spring practice is getting started. So we got a little bit to talk about today. First things first, Pierce Spurlin, medically disqualified. It's a real bummer to hear about him. Tight end for UGA, got to play a little bit last season. But yeah, it's a real bummer. Russ, I don't know if you have any insight on anything. You ever play with anybody who's medically disqualified? What are your thoughts on some of that stuff?
And it really is heartbreaking for those guys over there. I mean, there's not many people that play football. Excuse me. Water went out of our pipe. To play football at the University of Georgia, that's not their dream, right? I mean, when you're a little kid, you're in the backyard, you're between the hedges, you're catching one to beat Florida in the last few minutes. I mean, all these things are things from the time that you didn't even know what the Georgia Bulldogs were. There was something inside of you that's what you wanted to do. Then you start realizing that dream. You get to play up there. And a guy like Pierce Spurlin, who's been a guy that really contributed, had the skill set that in the modern offense, a big, long guy playing tight end, a pass-catching guy that can block a little. I mean, those are the guys that are just hard to find, just the way they're physically built. So when something like this happens, I think he said he had a heart condition. If I saw his post on Instagram right today, like your heart, no pun at all intended, just literally breaks for the kid because like that's been the goal of where it's at. Now, I'm sure just from the little bit I've read about Pierce Spurlin, he's probably grounded. He's probably got a good support system at home. And hopefully, football is not his identity because there's a lot more to life than that. But in the short run, man, when you're 19, 20, 21 years old, as a college kid living your literal dream and have it taken away because of a medical issue, it's just heartbreaking. And, we saw it with a few guys that we played with. Albert Hollis and Reggie Weeks come to mind. Guys had major leg injuries when we were there. And, those guys kept trying to fight and play and be a part of it. But, I mean, ultimately, injuries happen. There's nothing you can do about it. So he'll still be around the program. He'll get his education, get a degree and all that. He can go down as a DGD in all of our books. But, yeah, I mean, your heart just breaks for that kid. I mean, that's just not the way you want your career to end.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely not what you want to see. It is very, I'm sure he's, from what he said, like you said on his post, it looks like he's handled it pretty well with his, his family, his parents. He's got a good support system. So very, very, hopeful for him. And he's, like you mentioned, he's going to be around the program. Kirby Smart mentioned in his press conference, I think it was yesterday. Yeah, yesterday was start of spring practice. So yesterday that, he's still going to be around. He was still at practice. He's going to be helping out, still going to be on scholarship. So really great news for Pierce Spurlin there at the very least. So very, very fortunate to still have him with the program at the very least. Russ, today we had Pro Day. Roddy is back on the boards, but I have it pulled up here. We have an updated thread from Pro Day today. Couple things to note here off the top. Brock Bowers, who at the Combine, when we were at the Combine just 2 weeks ago, he did not partake in any football activities. He didn't do any of the drills. And he said that he would compete and do the drills and work out at Pro Day, at UGA Pro Day. He did not end up doing that. Apparently, he has a tweaked hamstring. It doesn't seem to be a major issue from what we can tell. It looks like he'll probably do some private workouts, but definitely not ideal there for Brock Bowers. And Amarius Mims also had a hamstring injury as well. I mean, we can go look at some of the major notes here from Pro Day. I think one of the most notable things is all 32 teams, NFL teams, were represented at
even the Falcons. Were the Falcons there?
From a tweet from Jim Nagy, Roddy may be able to tell, to give us a little bit more insight. But
the Falcons don't draft UGA players,
right?
But,
no,
they did sign our buddy Charlie Warner, by the way, this past week. So
talking
about people don't know. Bobby ain't even in America right now, so he's all kinds of love birding it off in Mexico. Not paying attention.
Right.
Charlie signed with the Falcons this week, so we got tight ends galore to talk about tonight. So maybe Charlie to the Falcons is going to be what breaks that streak of them not getting UGA guys. But yeah, Charlie Warner this week signed I believe it was a 3-year, $12 million deal with the Falcons. So
wow,
we're
that's awesome.
Charlie says he's coming on the show. We cook steaks in a couple of weeks, so we'll have to see. But
sounds good to me.
Hopefully, now we've got a group of guys going to be there. All right, so yeah, so they were all there today, and obviously the Falcons were there. I was joking about that, but
yeah, one of the big things to note, I think, is the Panthers' offensive coordinator as well as wide receiver coach was there today. There's been rumors, speculation. People think that they may take Ladd McConkey there in the second round with their pick. So definitely I think we've talked about this on the show before is, Ladd to the Panthers. I think it'd be great for him, but, it'd be an interesting situation with the Panthers kind of seeming like they're rebuilding almost. Just an interesting situation. And then I think the Steelers both, the Steelers and the Titans have both head coach and GM there. The Steelers, I mean, Mike Tomlin loves him some Georgia Bulldogs.
Oh yeah.
I feel like he's always at Georgia Pro Day, getting a look at all these different guys. I think, somebody took a picture of him out to dinner, I think last year it was the night of Pro Day.
Yeah.
And I forget who it was. They went to Chuck's Fish. He treated some guy to Chuck's Fish, and it may have been, I don't even remember. Anyways, not going to speculate there, but
Chuck's is banging, so I don't blame Mike Tomlin for that.
It is for sure. But yeah, so just a couple of things to note there. Some head coaches, some offensive coordinators.
When you talk about like Brock Bowers and Amaris Mims not working out today, you're a really elite talent, by the way, when you don't work out at Pro Day and you also don't work out at the Combine. And I'm not saying those guys don't have a tweaked hamstring or something like that, because I'm sure it is. But when they have their advisors, their trainers, their coaches, their agents, all these people in that corner in their ear telling them what they should do, and a lot of times in your ear has like a negative connotation. I don't mean that. People giving good solid advice. It's like, if you're not 100%, don't work out today, because they will do private workouts for these teams. And what that also does is these guys are not dumb. They will look at rosters and know where they want to be as far as a personnel standpoint, a coaching standpoint, maybe which city they want to live in. And if you don't want to go to, I don't know, we talked about the 49ers, San Francisco, for instance, you don't work out with them. You don't go run for them. You don't let them see something like that. And the chance of that team that's been a first-round pick on you, which Brock Bowers and Amaris Mims are going to be first-round guys, doesn't happen. So there's a little bit of strategy when you talk about those guys being tweaked up and not working out today. I mean, if the game was on the line, if it's nut-cutting time, Brock Bowers and Amaris Mims would have played today. But it ain't. And they're going to have all that world to impress teams they want to impress in private workouts. So why not? Those are the guys. Combines and pro days are for the guys that are trying to impress scouts and coaches. Brock Bowers, all he says is it's kind of like point to the scoreboard when you're beating the crap out of a team. But him, it's just you point at the tape. I mean, the tape turns on him, and you know what he's going to be able to do for you on the field. So, there's too much downside for him to work out if he's not 100%. And then Mims, we've talked about this on the show. There's like 5 dudes on the planet that are physically built like Amaris Mims. They talked about today. I thought this was interesting when Kirby was talking about him. Said kind of the knock on Mims this week is the talking point has been he only started 8 games at UGA. All right. Now, and I think Kirby had a great line with this. It's not just some kind of line you're sticking out there. He said, would you rather draft a guy that for 3 or 4 years had to block every day of practice Nolan Smith, Robert Bell, Tramel Walthour, and named off like 5 or 6 guys who are NFL players? Or would you rather draft a guy that started 48 games at this is not what Kirby said, but I'll say it, the Northwestern Idaho School for the Blind, but didn't play anybody? He don't play nobody, Paul. Like, Amaris Mims knows how to compete against guys at the highest level. So I think even that knock on him is not going to carry water. He's probably got more tread on his tires, if anything, there with only 8 starts and didn't play as much. But he's physically different than everybody else. There's nobody else in Athens, Georgia built like Amaris Mims. So he goes to, they're going to pick 12, 14, 15 teams that they're going to have private workouts for. They're going to invite him to. And Pro Day is just not as important for him. What Pro Day is important for, Pro Day is very important for guys like Dejon Edwards, Kendall Milton, Kamari Lassiter, Javon Bullard, Tyke Smith. Guys that are NFL guys, but they're going to get drafted. They're going to make it to the league. But they're now trying to bump their paycheck by another comma, right? They're trying to go from a guy that's going to get $1 million a year contract to a guy that's going to get a $2 million a year contract. They're trying to move from the 4th round to the 3rd round, the 2nd round to the 1st round, the 5th round to the 3rd round, whatever it may be. That's what Pro Day is for. Pro Day is for those guys to let the coaches see you, see how you're built, see how you move, see how you respond, see how you're coached, all those things. Like, that's what Pro Day is for. So, you see guys inevitably every year that make a lot of money at Pro Day because they run good, they jump good, they run routes well. Ladd McConkey at the combine, we talked about last week, his across the field drill where he caught the ball right, caught the ball left, caught the ball right. Like, I want you to find somebody in NFL combine history that's ran that drill smoother than Ladd McConkey. Then he ran a 4.39 40. Today he ran a 3.98 20-yard shuttle. A 3.98 20-yard shuttle, by the way, is freaking fast. That is blazing fast. And Ladd has made money through the Pro Day and the combines. Brock Bowers and Amaris Mims, they don't have to do the combines and Pro Day to make money. Their money's coming.
Yeah, I was looking at the board just now. It looks like, Roddy, I don't know if you can pull this up. The Unofficial Times, Jed was tweeting, very Unofficial Times, looked like Kamari Lassiter with a 4.56, Keldon Milton with a 4.71, 4.68 for Marcus Rosemy-Jackson, and 4.90 for Tramel Walthour. 4.90, I feel like that's pretty darn good for Tramel right there. I feel like that helped him out a little bit.
So I saw this thread, and I appreciate Jed doing it. But let's keep in mind that I think he was like behind the light pole looking around the bushes. Like, Kirby is very guarded when it comes to press access to practice. We know that pretty well from hearing all you guys talk. So, I mean, this is, a guy that doesn't – and again, no offense to our guy May here, but this is somebody sitting up looking around the edge of a building with a stopwatch trying to clock him. So, I think that some of those guys ran the combine and had better times than that. So, hopefully nobody did anything to hurt their draft stock today. But the great news for these guys at Georgia is the guys that have gone before them the last 3 or 4 years and how productive all these Georgia guys have been in the league helps tremendously. So unless they just come out and absolutely lay an egg, they're going to be just fine.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks like, Jed wanted to, heavily clarify. And as I looked down the thread more, he said very, very Unofficial Times. I mean, Jed he's right there, I mean, he's seeing the action live. Yeah, he probably is not the closest guy out there, but he certainly is, has his stopwatch.
I read the whole thread today. I read the whole thread today with a ton of interest just because he got closer than I got today. I didn't go there and watch any of it. So I thought it was cool. My point with that is, like, don't worry about the times that are being posted. There's a cool thing to look at. And again, I think some of those guys have better times at the combine. So, but it's interesting to hear just kind of what these guys go through. And, Pro Day is a pressure-packed day, man. Like, I didn't get to go to the combine when I came out in 2005. I wasn't a highly enough regarded prospect to make it to the combine. And nobody for the Peanut Galleries to comment on that. But, I got to work out a Pro Day like all of our other guys did. And, man, you bust your tail trying to get ready for that. I mean, between the bench, the 40, the 20-yard shuttle, the 3-cone drill, all these different things that put you through just to see how you move, what kind of, physical dude you are. But then there's a ton of position-specific drills that these guys go through. And those coaches, those NFL coaches, are actually working them like they would in a true, like, preseason camp or an off-season conditioning program. They want to see how they respond, what they do, how they act, how they, handle something that doesn't go well. Like, adversity is not a bad thing. Response to adversity is what's the key. And some guys get the opportunity to show that. So I think Kirby probably does a better job than anybody in the country of preparing his guys for these days that come up for these pro days. I guarantee they interview well. I guarantee you they know what to say, what not to say. I guarantee you they have good posture when they walk in. They shake hands properly. They look for the right guys to introduce themselves to. Like, these things are coached and ingrained in them. And it doesn't happen by accident, the amount of success that Georgia's had in the last 4 to 5 years in the NFL draft. I mean, it is very much on purpose.
Yeah. Russ, thoughts on, I believe I definitely heard Cedric Van Pran ask this multiple times when we were up at the combine. He was asked about moving around different positions, potentially playing guard, being a center, and Cedric Van Pran. What is your insight? Would you think that Cedric Van Pran would be okay and well equipped to move different positions? Van Pran did talk about how, he was expected to play multiple positions and he did move around and got reps at each position. But thoughts on that? Would he be able to translate that into the league well?
What's Tyson Brown? By the way, let's not let this comment go by. Tyson Browning is saying he'd love to see me run the 40. For the record, just because a man weighs 155 pounds and is faster than another man does not give him the right to talk trash. So Tyson Browning talking trash wouldn't come on the show because he knew we would bring up his 40 times when he was slow back in the day. Nah, there's dudes like Tyson who we played with, man, who running backs now we're proud to have. So time-wise. What was the question? What did Tyson get me all tight? That's a bad thing when your friends watch the show and comment. You got dummies writing stuff.
The question was Cedric Van Pran being able to translate to the league. Would be okay translating as a guard? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, yeah, he's going to be because he's super athletic. I mean, he's got the size for it. I mean, Ced is not a huge guy by NFL standards. He's not one of these 6'5", 340, 350 pound monsters, but he's got a thick lower body, got a big trunk, which you got to have to be an interior offensive lineman, and he moves really, really well. So, in my opinion, from watching, he's probably better suited to play center because he just excelled there. He did a great job of kind of being that bell cow in the middle of the line, getting everybody on the same page, making the calls, moving quickly, and actually snapping the ball well. In the NFL, and I saw his interview today, and he made the point. It's a great point. In the NFL, on game days, typically the NFL a lot of times will only travel 7 or 8 linemen to a game on active roster. So if you break that down, you typically have 4 guys that play the interior 3 positions, guard, center, guard. So 4 guys for that, and then 3 tackles. So those are your 7 guys, and maybe there's another guy, swing guy in there. So you're not going to those games with 1 guy that plays center and 1 backup center and then 2 guards. All of your interior guys that make it, unless you're just, again, one of those physical freak, enormous guard, man-eating type guys, you're going to rep guard and center at the NFL level. I rep guard and center at my time in Georgia. I started a couple of games at guard because of injuries. I guarantee you, that's not a word. Guaranteed is not a word. I guarantee you, Cedric Van Pran has played guard during his time at UGA in practice. He's repped that. So it's not going to be new to him. If he was stiff, couldn't move, had bad feet, or his hips didn't work right, I'd feel differently. But that's not him, man. He's a super smart kid. He's a leader, and he moves really well. So if you got flexible hips and quick feet, which he does, you can play any position. I hope he plays center. I love center. He loves center, and that's probably where he's going to play. But if he's got to slide to guard, he's going to do it. Cedric Van Pran is going to play in the NFL probably 14 years. Watch. He's going to have a long career.
I think a lot of people like hearing that. Just they've seen, Cedric Van Pran. They see how smart he is. They've heard him talk. He was one of Kirby Smart's favorite guys to put at the podium for press conferences. Roddy and UGA sports team had, saw him regularly. So a lot of the fans got to see him regularly as well. Whoever watches our YouTube channel got to see Cedric Van Pran a lot. So I
love to hear him say "Go Dogs" with his Cajun accent. I can't even try to do it. Like if I try to do it, it'll probably turn into like a Jamaican accent or something like that. I love to hear him say "Go Dogs" with his Cajun accent.
When we were at the combine, somebody asked him what happened to his Cajun accent because he was up at the podium not talking in a New Orleans accent, and he said, this is a job interview. If I talk in a Cajun accent, nobody would be able to understand me, and I wouldn't get a job or something like that. And people wouldn't be able to understand me.
Hey,
so
I get it, man.
I had to
look. Yeah. I don't have an accent anymore compared to when I first came to Georgia, and I'm just from South Georgia. So I came to Athens, and it's like, hey, how y'all doing? My name's Russ. I'm from Wrightsville. I like to fish. And people are like, what? Like David Pollock, my roommate, and I had to translate anybody south of Macon. I had to translate to Pollock what they were saying. So. Those of us who are a little bit more cultured in how we learn to talk, whether we're from Wrightsville or New Orleans, you learn to tone it down so that the masses can understand you. That's what he did. He ain't no dummy.
Yeah. Another thing to note from Pro Day today was the fact that Gunnar Stockton was throwing passes to pass catchers, wide receivers, Mark Strosby-Jackson, Lad McConkey. I think maybe some people were surprised that it wasn't Carson Beck. Why wouldn't it have been Carson Beck, Russ? Do you know anything about that? Is there any specific reason? Any insight?
Well, I mean, maybe because he's working on a left-handed pass. No, I have no idea. I don't know. I'm sure it has to do with agents and advisors and people, telling him as far as what he needs to do in front of NFL scouts. Because if you step on the field, if you're Carson Beck right now, every NFL scout is going to watch you, because Carson Beck is going to be a guy that hopefully is in the conversation to be a first-round pick after this next year, depending on how he plays. So everything you do when you're in his position is scrutinized at the highest level. I mean, if you sneeze, they watch how you cover your nose up, right? I mean, if you tie your shoe, they see which way do you make the bunny loop when you pull it through. Like they're scrutinizing everything you do. So it's kind of the same thing we talked about Brock earlier. There's no benefit to him of going out there in front of those guys and making a throw when you haven't been repping with your guys. Like all these guys he'd be throwing to, they haven't been staying in Athens working out. Brock Bowers has not been hanging out at the Buttsmere building. Ladd has not been going downtown to Chuck's Fish and then coming back out to the intramural fields and throwing frisbee some with Carson Beck. They've been off training somewhere else, and timing is so important. So you don't want to look bad if you're Carson Beck there. So why not? Gunnar Stockton, he's the guy. He doesn't have film yet. He is still an unproven commodity as far as what happens on the field. And if he gets a chance to step in front of NFL scouts and he rips a throw, rips a 15-yard out, throws a skinny post on the money, drops a fade in the bucket. If he does these things and the NFL scouts are like, whoa, okay. All right, let's remember this. Put a pin in that. Carson Beck's going to be the guy this year pulling up his Lamborghini. But after him, this other cat, he looks pretty good too. Where's he from? Raven County? Okay, let's watch that. So that, I'm sure that's what it is. I mean, there's no downside for Gunnar Stockton performing in front of these NFL guys because he doesn't have NFL stock right now. And again, that's no knock him. He just hasn't played at Georgia yet. Not in a significant way, but his day is coming.
Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest piece is the fact that it's just a way for Gunnar Stockton to get in front of these NFL scouts. I think, people are going to watch Carson Beck. People are going to watch Carson Beck this next year. That's not a doubt. So, I think you're probably right on the money with your interpretation of why they decided to go with Gunnar Stockton instead. But looks like that's about all the notable stuff that we have from Pro Day today. So Russ will kind of transition over to spring practice. Spring practice got started. I believe yesterday was the first day. Russ, what is spring practice like? There are guys coming back from spring break, getting into the groove of things. Tell me about spring practice and what's the adjustment period? Is it a hard adjustment process coming back after, kind of being not necessarily dormant, but you're not used to football activities as much?
You're definitely not. And by the way, I see Red Womack in the comments saying he still talks like I do. I appreciate that. People south of the Macon-Dixon line understand, so I appreciate that. But Chaz Chambliss, I mean, how are we going to put a dude with that many abs on there? And how many years has Chaz Chambliss played, by the way? I'm glad he's back. You need guys like him that are leaders, that are experienced, that know what to do. But this has got to be his 8th year playing outside linebacker for us. Spring is funny because you got guys like Chaz Chambliss who are they're the old heads now. They're the vets. They've been around 4 or 5, and some of these guys now 6 years. I mean, not making fun. So you're just showing up trying to make sure that your teammates do what they're supposed to do. You're showing up making sure you're in good shape. You want to stay healthy. You don't want to get hurt. You want to make sure you're setting the tone for the team. But the other side of it, the thing that makes spring so interesting now, and it wasn't the dynamic when I played nearly as much, is you've now got a third of the team probably that were not on the roster last year, whether it be the early enrollees or the transfers. And as the transfer portal picks up more and more, Georgia signed, 5 or 6 guys in the portal this year, and then 30-ish early signees, probably 25, 26 of them early enrollees. I don't know the number off the top of my head. But you've now got roughly a third of the guys practicing who are brand new to the program. They have never actually been on the field with these coaches. They've never had Kirby on the mic on the sideline, absolutely expanding your he's ripping people some out there sometimes. Like they've got to be
coming up with new insults they never heard before.
He's pretty good at it. And also these guys are also adjusting what it's like to practice. Like if you come out of high school, it doesn't matter how good you think you are in high school, you are not prepared for what you're about to run into when you get up here at these practices, these men that you're lining up against. And from the intensity standpoint, the talent standpoint, it's a huge adjustment. So you got one group, your vets, your old heads, they're trying to just get better in their craft. They're working on little things. They're making sure that they're in the right place at the right time. They're helping the younger guys learn. Then you got all these brand new faces who, man, they're trying to earn stripes. They're trying to get playing time in the fall. And they've got to catch coaches' eyes now, because the closer you get to the season, the narrower the list of guys that's going to get on the field becomes. Like right now, there's not a guy on the roster that does not have an opportunity to start in the fall. That's a fact. There's not a guy on the roster that doesn't have an opportunity to start. Now, does that mean that, Ryan Puglisi is going to beat out Carson Beck? No. But if he comes in and absolutely balls out and does something that they've never seen before, yes. So hope springs eternal at this time of year as far as that's concerned. But you're trying to catch the coach's eyes to get playing time in the fall. So you got guys that are going just absolutely balls to the wall right now, trying to bust heads and get going, not make mistakes. Their heads are spinning. They're drinking out of a fire hose. All these different cliches we could use. So it's an interesting time in the spring. And the way that Kirby and that staff rolls over there, it is not for the faint of heart. It is. I think the philosophy is if you get banged up, there's time to heal. Like, let's go full speed and set the tone for the type of program that we are and that we have been. So I think it's a really interesting time. You got a team that should be hungrier again this year. The last 2 years they've come in the spring as the champs, man. Like they got the belt. They're the champ, the double champ last year coming in, and it's like, do you know who Marvin Hagler is?
I do not.
Oh, marvelous Marvin Hagler, one of the greatest boxers that ever lived. And they asked him one time, why did boxers inevitably fall off after they won the championship? And he's like, man, when you get them nice silk sheets on your bed in the morning, it's hard to get up and go to the gym. Like, it's hard to keep that fire and to be as hungry as you were before. And no matter how hard the coaches work, these guys are 19, 20, 21, 22 years old, and a little bit of complacency can set in. But this past year was a disappointment in the aspect that they didn't win the national championship. And I know it's weird. It shouldn't be disappointing because Georgia had a great year. But after you won it twice in a row, to come back and not win it, it leaves a bad taste in your mouth. So I expect there to be a little bit more fire, a little bit more intensity, a little bit more focus. And now you've got the dude in Carson Beck who he's the dude. Like, it's his team now. And I know nothing about Carson Beck. I've never met him in person to talk to him, have a conversation. But if you're the quarterback of the team that started super successful, you're the upperclassman, it's your team. And you're going to come in and set the tone for how those guys operate. So I think there's a lot to learn about Georgia from this spring, probably more so than the last couple of years.
Yeah. A couple things from, what you just said. Kirby did in his press conference, he went through a decent list of injuries that they're working through right now. So opportunities for guys to kind of, come out and prove themselves. As well as he did mention he hasn't seen any of like Colby Young or some of these other guys, some of these transfers come in, Trevor Etienne. He literally said, all I've seen them do is run around in circles and do this, that. Like, I can't tell you anything about them. Yep. All I have seen them do is run around in circles. Yep. So he has seen very little of these guys, these new transfers that are coming in. And I don't even think Ben Urosic, the tight end transfer, I don't even think he's here yet.
Right.
So that's something that Kirby mentioned in his press conference yesterday as well, is he's not even here yet. So there are guys that
signing in light of the Pierce Spurlin news. That signing looks even bigger now, by the way. So
absolutely. So a couple different things, a huge adjustment period for a lot of these different guys, and a decent amount of coaching turnover for this roster. It's going to be, I feel like it's going to be a lot of learning. They're going to have a lot of learning to do. This is, not necessarily a new team because there's a lot of the same guys, the veterans, the guys returning, but I mean, there's a lot of new faces around here too. So it's gonna be a big learning curve. Like you said, Ben Yurosky isn't even here yet. So Kirby hasn't seen any of these guys. So will the coaching staff, is that going to be a big learning curve here, or do you think that they kind of have some of that stuff ironed out? Although it's been, a very short period of time that some of these guys have been around, some of these new coaches.
There's no way not to have a learning curve. There is
Yeah.
0% chance you don't learn something, because experience is the greatest teacher there is when it comes to stuff like this. So until you're on the field with the guys, you're in a live meeting room with the guys, watching film, going over things, getting your butt chewing somebody's butt at practice. I mean, and you learn kind of the nuances of communication and relationships. You're learning that, if nothing else. And these guys are still learning the actual scheme of what they're doing. Like, don't forget, these coaches who come in, these brand new coaches, like, yes, they work very hard to set the playbook, know the plan, all that stuff. But they also probably work harder on recruiting during this time of year, because that's their focus. So you got coaches that are literally having to learn on the fly because they just haven't been here that long. You don't know the personnel. You don't know the plays. You don't even know how things run at practice. You don't know how Kirby wants things done. But the reputation is kind of starting to precede this program a little bit. So those guys typically come out intense. They come out a little bit of fire and brimstone, snot flying out of their nose when they're yelling at you a little bit. I mean, they're trying to get in people's grill and make sure that, they're doing whatever they think they've got to do to earn respect pretty quick. So it's a huge learning curve, probably more so in the past years. You got a lot of turnover, not only on the roster, but as you mentioned, the coaching staff, especially on the offensive side of the ball now. So fortunately, you got Coach Bobo back, who's been here a couple of years. Coach Searles is back again. So you got to look, Coach Hartley, obviously you can name a couple there. But when you see these brand new guys coming in, like, they've got to learn how to coach together. It's a big deal. It's the way it is in college football. It's nothing new. All these guys have been through it before, but you've got to learn. And the teams that win this year, and Georgia's not alone in this, right? Every team goes through it to some extent every year. But the teams that figure it out the quickest are the ones who are best positioned to come out of the gates quick and to be at the top of the polls, making the playoffs, and ultimately have a crack at another national championship in the fall, which is the goal, right? I mean, you think about those things. Even here, sitting here, what's say March 12th, 13th, whatever the day is, 13th. I mean, you think about it this early in the year, you got to plan like you want to win another one in the fall, and that's what they're doing. And spring's going to be intense, man, for the coaches and the players. It's going to be intense.
Absolutely. Russ, another kind of piece here is the NCAA is now allowing new helmet technology. I mean, this is something at the NFL level. The NFL's had it for years, but headsets in the players' helmets, is that, I mean, it's really for
Harbaugh,
quarterbacks, right? And it's the Harbaugh rule. But I mean, do you think there will be a learning curve with that? I believe Kirby said, and another piece from his press conferences, they're going to get to experiment with it. They haven't yet, but they have used helmet communication before, not in this size, I guess, not of this scale. They've used communication, at practice, or this, that, or the other, but nothing in game before. Do you think that's
Right.
going to be a learning curve for some of these guys? I mean, I feel like it's going to be beneficial, and
it's going to be beneficial. And I mean, I don't think it takes you very long in spring to figure that out. I mean, basically, once the coaches, I think timing is probably the thing they're going to have to work on practicing the most, because I don't know the rule how college is going to do it this year. I haven't read that, but in the NFL, I think the mic's cut off at about 15 seconds on the play clock, so you can't listen all the way up to the snap on there. It cuts off. So you got to get your stuff in quickly. You got to be able to get your communication out in a way that makes sense, that you're not mumbling, stumbling, fumbling over the words, and then letting that be what happens. It's just a different. The mechanism for getting the play in is going to change, because before it's the coach calling it out to the guy really quickly so they can then measure it in. Whatever their signals were on the sideline. That was me signaling plays, by the way, if you didn't catch that. That's not going to happen anymore. So it's going to be just a little bit different feel for getting in. But I feel like this is something that you adjust to very quickly. So
yeah, it's I believe that this article that Roddy just pulled up for us, it's Where's the part? Let me go look at it for myself. He says, as I understand it, each SEC team would have 3 helmet devices they could use in practice. It's a supply chain issue. Nothing like the school has 10. The school has 2. Smart said there's a lot of liability involved in touching the helmets and putting pieces in. They're going to distribute those equally among the conference. So it seems like it's a supply chain issue as of right now, and they're working on. Obviously, it's spring practice. We just got started, so they're slowly working on rolling this stuff out. It may take a little bit, but it appears from what Kirby said that they only have 2 right now. I'm assuming for, probably the quarterback. It's probably what they're using it for.
Well, you got to get if the offense gets one, the defense gets one as well. So that's what you got to do. But maybe the quarterbacks are now. But supply chain. I'm sure Kirby is saying supply chain. It's probably what has been told, but COVID is over. Can we please get past all the supply chain stuff? Like, maybe we need to get into the helmet communication. Like, just tape a walkie-talkie to their ear or something. Like, it can't be that hard. I mean, the NFL's had this forever. So, it's probably because people like Vanderbilt can't figure it out. So we can't get an unfair advantage on them. So we can't have it if they can't have it. But, yeah, I mean, it's long overdue. There's no reason not to have that out there.
Absolutely.
But, it's kind of like the whole thing. Like, why can't they come up with a better technology for measuring first downs? Right now, we literally have 3 guys on the sideline dressed up like zebras that put a pin in a chain and jog out on the field, not even in an athletic manner, and try to stretch it out to see where it goes. Now, it is a lot of intent. it's a lot of pressure when you're watching that chain stretch, trying to see if it's going to work or not. But, I think that these types of technology, these types of innovation in the game are good, and I like them.
Yeah. I think one more thing we'll kind of round the show out here as we're kind of, gradually closing the show out. The last thing we'll talk about is Nick Saban going in front of, I believe it was the U.S. government, was it not? I thought I saw a video on Twitter today of him basically petitioning the U.S. government, probably, some sort of NIL regulations, because, he basically was saying that it's just gotten out of hand at this point. Every single coach in college football can attest to the fact that all these guys, all they care about is how much money they're going to make. That's all they asked about. He even came out and said that, that was the reason why he retired, was every single conversation, every single player that came into his office to talk before the season or when the season ended, asked him about money. And I think, who was it that came on our show? Was it Coach Rick who came on our show and told us that the morning before, or the morning that he retired, he was interviewing coordinators. He was interviewing assistant coaches. And then later that day, he was just like, I'm done. He just retired on the spot. So this is getting out of hand. Nick Saban is literally sitting in front of the United States government. I believe he was side by side with Ted Cruz is who it was, and petitioning for regulation in the NIL sphere. So I guess it's good to see. I think I saw Drew Butler, I believe, tweeted. We had him on our show. He tweeted something about, there's the article right there, Roddy just pulled it up, how NIL contributed to Nick Saban's retirement from college football. But Drew Butler tweeted, great, we have, the only other, slow and basically incompetent organization. We were working with the NCAA, and now we're working with the United States government, the only other, incompetent. Anyways, just a very interesting.
Well, I'm glad we're able to pull what Drew said there and let him say it. He doesn't mind being a little bit more controversial than I like to be. But I think NIL is out of control. I think NIL's got to be changed. It's got to be fixed. I saw Saban talking about today, Bryce Young. Bryce Young got a BMW thing. That's great. He earned it. He was a Heisman Trophy winner. He was the dude at Alabama. He should be able to use that to his advantage and make all the money that somebody's willing to pay him for that. But the NIL, from the standpoint of recruiting and the transfer portal, that's what's got to be fixed. The transfer portal is what they got to fix. I think the transfer portal has to be fixed more so than the NIL does. You're going to see very soon, and I don't think the government intervening is the answer. The government can't fix nothing. Like, what has the government fixed in the last 10, 15, 20 years that we've looked at and said, man, I'm so glad the government stepped in and fixed that? The majority of the times when things get better is because the government deregulates something or gets rid of their rules and lets the market figure it out, and people with common sense get it done, not people who are trying to remain in power and keep a vote. Like those people aren't the ones who need to decide what happens with college football. It's the people who are in it every day. That's who should decide. So let the politicians stay out of it. Let's go there for a second. As far as what's about to happen, they're going to have to put rules on the transfer portal as far as when you can transfer, how long you can transfer, and then they're going to sign these kids to contracts for these NIL deals. You right now in the pros, you can't leave after 1 year and go somewhere else because you want to be paid more. Right now, there's literally no rules, and it's the NCAA's fault. They have set this up to be like it is with no rules, no regulations, and then they do nothing to enforce it. By the way, that's made up of the school presidents. So let's not say that the NCAA can't change, because they can. The school presidents have to come together and decide what they're actually willing to do to make this different. But they're going to end up having contracts for these players so that they sign a 2-year, 3-year deal where they've got to be there. And then the other things about to start happening too is these players are about to start getting fined for things that they miss. If they miss study, watch, mark my words here. I've had a conversation with somebody very high up in college athletics recently. Not to ever be that guy who's like, I know a guy, but I did have a conversation with somebody recently who's part of these types of conversations on high levels. And he said in the next few years, you're going to see players starting to get fined. Like right now, they got class checkers to see if they go to class. If they miss a class, they're going to get fined $500. If they miss a study hall, they miss a workout, they're going to get fined $1,000, $100, whatever it is. Like they're going to start being treated like employees with it. And, you know, that's going to start changing in a hurry for how things are done and how they happen. This willy-nilly, you can go every single year wherever you want to go based on who pays you the most. It's a terrible thing for college football, and it's terrible for the kids. Money makes a terrible master. You know, if you read the good book, it talks about money as much as just about anything else. The love of money will destroy you, and it doesn't set these kids up well for life. So I think this Wild West, letting everybody do whatever they want, whenever they want, is terrible for college football. I'm pro NIL. I think players should be able to earn money based on their name and likeness. They should not be able to pimp themselves out of the transfer portal every single year to the highest bidder and let that be what determines where they play college football.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was a soapbox.
I think one of the pieces in that article, I don't know if Rowdy's able to pull it back up, but it was interesting. I'm going to butcher it if I try and come up with it again without reading it. But there was something about talking, Nick Saban saying it was the transfer portal. He did mention the transfer portal in it as well. There we go. Let's see. All the things I believed in for all these years, 50 years of coaching, no longer exist in college athletics. It was always about developing players. It was always about helping people to be more successful in life. And then I believe if you scroll down, Roddy, for me, there was a piece, another paragraph. Where was it? As I said before, name, image, and likeness is a great opportunity for them, create a brand for themselves. Yeah, the one below that statement said when he got into college coaching, it was about personal development, academic support, preparing young men for the time when they couldn't play football anymore. But the transfer rules and NIL have created a pay for play that has upset the competitive balance in college sports. And it's a slippery slope. And we didn't see regulations on the front end of this. This was kind of the Wild West, as we've talked about. Many people have mentioned that, compared it to the Wild West, because it really is. There is nothing. There's no regulations even involved in it, and it's just become a massive slippery slope. We're here now. It's forced Nick Saban into retirement, which is crazy. It is insane to think about
that. Like, let's not cry river from Nick Saban. Like, let's pull up Google. See who can Google Nick Saban's career earnings, by the way. When Nick Saban started coaching football 30, 40 years ago, he was making, $10,000 a year. Got a head coach job, probably $300-400 a year. I mean, over the last 10 years, he's made over $100 million in probably the last 10 years. So as the money's grown, obviously there's been issues, and the players should be compensated. The players should be able to earn based on where they're at. But the NCAA allowing the transfer portal to be what I think the portal, again, I'll repeat what I said earlier. The portal is a bigger issue than NIL. Okay? It just is. The portal is a bigger issue than the NIL. And I think you're going to see a lot of kids that really regret their college career because of what they decided to do through the transfer portal.
That's fair. You heard it here, guys. Russ Tanner thinks that the portal is worse than NIL. And I can't necessarily disagree. I think NIL, there are good ways to use it. We've seen
Roddy. Oh, Roddy came and left.
We've seen NIL develop over time, and I just think there are good ways to use it, and we've talked about this before, so we won't rehash it. There are certainly good benefits to the NIL. It's just, your opinion about the transfer portal is one that I think I'm less passionate about. I think you're more passionate about it than I am, and that's fair. But yeah, I think this is just crazy. It's insane to hear that something like this has forced a head coach, a historic head coach like Nick Saban into retirement is unbelievable. So
he's also 72 years old. Okay, let's not again. He's 72 years old and very rich. I mean, it ain't.
Yes, I know. I get you, but how much longer is Kirby Smart going to be able to put up with this? That's what brings it into perspective for me.
I agree with that. I don't think you'll see Kirby coaching in his 70s. I mean,
yeah,
Kirby's I think still in his 40s right now, 46, 47, if I'm not mistaken. Somebody probably knows better than I do. But I mean, why would you if you were him with the way it is right now? You have to recruit your roster and every other roster the entire year and beg for money constantly. I mean, you make your $100 million going down the road, man. Go to the Grand Cayman Islands or Lake Oconee or wherever else you're going to hang out with your beautiful family for a while. So, I mean, that's what I would do if I was him. But they're going to fix it. The landscape of college football is going to look drastically different 3 to 5 years from now than what we're looking at right now. I don't know what that's going to look like, but it's going to change.
Yeah. Well, folks, that's about all we have for you today. Rounded out on some very interesting NIL conversations there, Russ. Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to like, subscribe. Tune in for Dawgs and Hawgs every Wednesday at 8 p.m. So glad that you guys joined us. Subscribe to the channel. Go check out ugasports.com, where you can find all the content that we talked about today on this show and much, much more. There's so many things that we didn't even get to and mention today. But thank you for tuning in. We will be back again with more Dawgs and Hawgs. Russ, as always,
go Dawgs!
Go Dawgs!